July 2017. You were sitting in your room, laptop open, Tor browser glowing in the dark. A week ago, Alphabay, the biggest drug market on the internet, was wiped off the map. Every forum is in chaos, thousands of buyers scrambling to find a new home. Tonight, you think you have found it, the Hansa Market. It looks professional. Vendors are already posting fresh listings. Cocaine, MDMA, counterfeit bills, even malware tools. You scroll, heart racing. Everyone online says this is the new Alphabay, the safe place. So you create an account, pick a username, encrypt a message, and place your first order. What you do not know is that the moment you hit send, someone else is watching. Not a hacker, not a rival dealer, the Dutch police. Because weeks before Alphabay went down, the Dutch police force owned Hansa.
Against another major criminal marketplace known as the Hansa Market. The shutting down of that is one of the most sophisticated law enforcement operations against cybercrime that we've ever seen. That's 40,000 vendors, depending on the marketplaces, to sell everything from fentanyl to illegal firearms and malware for cybercrime.
In the early 2000s, a small group of American researchers built something unusual. It was called Tor, which stood for the Onion Router. At first, it was a military project, a tool created by the American government designed to protect American spies and military personnel online. The idea was simple. Every time you go online, your traffic normally moves in a straight line, from your computer to your service provider, then to the site you are visiting. At each step, someone can see who you are and where you are going. Tor scrambled that path. Instead of moving in one line, your traffic was wrapped in layers of encryption, like an onion. Each layer peeled away at a different stop, bouncing your signal from server to server across the world. By the time it reached its destination, no one could easily trace it back to you. The site you visited would not know your location. The server carrying your traffic would not know where it came from. This was valuable to the military, but it also posed a problem. If only American spies used Tor, then using it would become suspicious. Enemies would know that anyone inside the network was likely intelligence. So the government released it to the public. And with it came drug dealers, hackers, criminals who saw for the first time a safe space online. Here, you could sell almost anything, and you could do it without revealing who you were. The first site to really show the world what was possible appeared in 2011. It was called the Silk Road. At a glance, Silk Road looked like a normal e-commerce site. But instead of electronics or books, it was heroin, LSD, forged passports. The man behind it was Ross Ulbricht, a physics graduate from Texas. Online, he called himself Dread Pirate Roberts. Ulbricht imagined Silk Road as a grand experiment. He believed in free markets. He believed governments had no right to control what people bought. Buyers could log in, pay with Bitcoin, and receive a package in the mail days later. Sellers left reviews. Customers rated service. It was fast, efficient, and for a while it felt untouchable. Law enforcement couldn't believe what they were seeing. A global drug bazaar, hiding in plain sight. But it didn't last. In October 2013, Ulbricht was arrested in a public library in San Francisco. Agents distracted him with a staged argument, then grabbed his laptop before he could close it. Inside was everything. His chats, his orders, his empire. Silk Road was gone, but the idea did not vanish. Within months, new marketplaces appeared, each one bigger, slicker, and more profitable than the last. The most powerful of them all was Alphabay. Launched in 2014, it quickly grew into the largest black market the internet had ever seen. At its peak, Alphabay hosted more than 200,000 listings. Scrolling through Alphabay could feel disturbingly normal, except the products were fentanyl, counterfeit passports, and hacking tutorials. Compared to Silk Road, it felt like an upgrade in every way. The interface was cleaner, the system more stable, and the scale far greater. Vendors treated it like a business. Buyers praised its reliability. The money flowing through the site reached into the hundreds of millions. Behind it all was a man named Alexander Kazas. On the forums, the 26-year-old Canadian called himself Alpha02. Kazas lived like a tech millionaire in Chiang Mai, Thailand. He drove luxury cars, dined in expensive restaurants, and told neighbors he ran a web development business. No one suspected he was also Alpha2, the man behind the largest criminal marketplace on Earth. Kazas believed he had built something untouchable. Alphabay used Tor for anonymity, cryptocurrencies for payments, and servers hidden across multiple countries. Each layer made him harder to trace, harder to pin down. For law enforcement, Alphabay was a nightmare. They could see the scale of the trade, but the man at the center of it seemed out of reach. By 2017, Alphabay was processing hundreds of millions in sales. Some buyers ordered a single pill. Others arranged shipments measured in kilograms. For the first time, organized crime and small-time dealers shared the same storefront. While Alphabay dominated the darknet, it wasn't the only marketplace. Tucked just beneath it was another site, quieter, smaller, but still thriving, the Hansa Market. Launched in 2015, Hansa had grown into one of the top 3 darknet markets. It hosted tens of thousands of listings. To most users, it was simply another place to shop if Alphabay or its competitors went offline. Compared to the chaos of Alphabay's booming forums, Hansa felt more restrained. The design was clean. The admins enforced strict rules. Vendors were expected to use encryption. Transactions had to go through escrow, and scams were quickly shut down. Behind the site were 2 Dutch administrators. Unlike Alexander Kazis, they weren't living in villas or showing off sports cars. They stayed in the background, keeping Hansa alive with careful management. One handled the coding, keeping the servers stable and secure. The other managed the community, acting as a kind of moderator for the darknet's most secretive customer base. By 2016, Hansa had carved out a reputation as a reliable alternative to Alphabay. It didn't have the same scale, but it had stability. Vendors appreciated its rules. Buyers trusted its system. In the shadows of Alphabay's empire, Hansa was quietly building its own kingdom. No one knew just how important that kingdom was about to become. In early July 2017, Alexander Kazis was living his usual routine in Chiang Mai. Each morning he drove his Porsche or Lamborghini through quiet Thai streets, returning to a villa filled with designer goods and electronics. On the surface, life was perfect. But investigators were already closing in. A team from the FBI, DEA, and Europol had been building a case for months, tracing Alphabay's servers across multiple countries. One clue stood out. Years earlier, when Alphabay was still small, Kazis had used his personal Hotmail address in a forum post. It was a small slip, but it connected directly to him. Even then, finding him was no simple task. Alphabay's servers were spread across different jurisdictions. Data moved through layers of encryption. Every request for data required coordination between agencies that didn't usually share information. For a long time, Kazis seemed like a ghost, shielded by the very system he had built. But little by little, the net tightened. Surveillance teams tracked his movements in Thailand. Digital forensics linked his devices to Alphabay's infrastructure. Slowly, the picture came together. Alexander Kazis was Alpha 02. On July 5th, Thai police and American agents made their move. They raided his villa at dawn, catching Kazis at his computer. His laptop was open, logged in as Alphabay's administrator. Inside were messages, passwords, server locations, everything investigators needed to shut the site down. The next day, Alphabay vanished. Thought it was a technical failure. Others guessed a law enforcement raid. Within hours, the truth became clear. Alphabay was gone. The darknet's biggest empire had fallen overnight. And in its absence, millions of dollars and thousands of users needed somewhere else to go. Within days, thousands of them poured into Hansa. Traffic spiked overnight. Orders flooded in. To the community, it looked like the market had been saved. But behind the scenes, Hansa was no longer being run by its original administrators. Weeks earlier, Dutch investigators had quietly taken control of Hansa. They had arrested its 2 administrators, seized the servers, and gained full access to the market's back end. But instead of shutting it down, they reached out to the FBI and Europol with a bold idea. If they moved too fast, Alphabay's collapse would scatter criminals across dozens of smaller sites, making them impossible to track. So the Dutch team asked for patience. They urged their American counterparts, hold Alphabay online a little longer, delay the takedown, give us time to finish locking down Hansa. The plan worked. When Alphabay finally went dark, Hansa was fully under police control, waiting like a loaded trap. From that moment on, every order was evidence. Dutch engineers rewrote parts of the site's code, forcing vendors to reveal more than they realized. Encrypted messages were silently copied into plain text. Login credentials were recorded as soon as they were typed. Even the metadata of uploaded images, geotags, and device information was stripped out and stored for investigators. The timing was devastating. As Alphabay's refugees flooded in, the Dutch police sat behind their screens and watched. In just a few weeks, investigators had gathered thousands of delivery addresses, hundreds of vendor identities, and a detailed map of the darknet drug trade, and the people using Hansa had no idea. On July 20th, 2017, Europol held a press conference. Behind the podium, investigators from the United States, Thailand, Lithuania, and the Netherlands stood side by side. Cameras flashed as they revealed the full story. Alphabay and Hansa had both been taken down in a coordinated operation. The darknet community was stunned. For weeks, criminals had been conducting business as usual on Hansa, never realizing every order was being recorded. Europol announced that investigators had collected more than 10,000 delivery addresses and thousands of login credentials. The evidence was already feeding into arrests around the world. On the forums, paranoia spread like wildfire. Vendors deleted their profiles. Buyers wiped their devices. Some disappeared completely. Others insisted Hansa had been an inside job, unable to accept they had been tricked by a market they trusted. The message was clear. On the darknet, the biggest threat might not be the dealer on the other side of the screen. It might be the administrator running the site itself. For Alphabay's and Hansa's users, the golden age was over. And for law enforcement, the takedown marked one of the most successful infiltrations in cybercrime history.